Thundery showers across parts of Wales, south and southwest England continuing for a time. It does tend to brighten up for a while into the afternoon with some warm sunshine developing, and there'll be some sunny spells for the central and northern part of Scotland, Northern Ireland. Cooler here, but with also a few showers in the far north of Scotland. An area of cloud persists across southern Scotland, northern England, but the rain tending to fizzle out through the day. Then into Sunday, this plume of thundery rain pushes north across many parts of the UK. Hit and miss downpours, but where we see these thunderstorms, they could be fairly lively. Further thundery showers into Monday and Tuesday, turning cooler widely.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Well, hello there. Happy Friday to you. I am Michelle Dewberry. Coming up tonight, there is a horrendous video of a child being assaulted. Now, a 12-year-old has been arrested. But I can tell you now, this has prompted outrage by some, saying that a 12-year-old in this country should never really be able to get a criminal record. Really? In this country, England, Wales, for example, the age of criminality is 12. In Scotland, it is 10. What do you think to this? You tell me. Old enough? Too old? Too young? Your thoughts. And very sad news, because 3,000 jobs look to be at risk in Port Talbot, of course, related to Tata Steel. The government now coming under fire, saying apparently that they have failed the steel industry in this country. Do you think that's the case or not? And what on earth is going to happen to these poor workers, many of whom probably have never worked anywhere else in their whole career? And Bully XL dogs will be banned. Do you agree with that? I also want to ask tonight, how on earth do you defend yourself if you or a loved one is victim of a dog attack? An expert will join me to answer that question. And because it's Friday, I'm going to give you a dash of something positive to see you into the weekend with a smile. We've got it all coming, we've got it all coming and more. But before we get into all of that, let's grab the news headlines.
Michelle, thank you. Well, the main story on GB News today is that the former nurse Lucy Letby has filed a bid to challenge her conviction at the Court of Appeal. The 33-year-old was found guilty of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 6 more at the Countess of Chester Hospital between 2015 and 2016. The most prolific child serial killer in modern British history was sentenced to a whole life order at Manchester Crown Court this month. Now she's going for appeal. We'll bring you more on that, of course, if we get it. Now, the man killed in a dog attack in Staffordshire has been named by police. 52-year-old Ian Price died in hospital after being seriously injured in Stonall near Walsall at around 3:15 yesterday afternoon. He had been attacked by 2 dogs. A 30-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of being in charge of dogs dangerously out of control and causing injury. It's believed both dogs were American XL bullies. Well, the Prime Minister has said that breed will be banned in the UK by the end of the year. Labour supports that proposed ban.
The first step is to convene a group of experts in the field and the police to define the breed, and then using the powers under the existing Dangerous Dogs Act, we will then be able to ban the breed, and laws will be in place by the end of the year. But it's clear from the attacks we've seen, tragic incidences, that we do need to take action to protect the public and stop these attacks, and that's what we're going to do.
Well, also in the news today, 3 members of Sarah Sharif's family have been remanded in custody after being charged with the 10-year-old's murder. Sarah's father, Irfan Sharif, and his partner and brother appeared in court today. They've also been charged with causing or allowing the death of a child. Sarah was found dead at her home in Woking in Surrey after officers were called from Pakistan by the child's father on the 10th of August. Unions have vowed to fight the government tooth and nail after a £500 million government investment in Tata Steel has, the union says, put 3,000 jobs at risk. The government says, however, it will support more than 12,000 jobs in the sector overall. Tata has been in talks with the government to switch from coal-fired to electric furnaces in an effort to reduce carbon emissions by 1.5%. The Business and Trade Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, says the government is saving the industry.
This is good for the taxpayer, this is good for the workforce, because actually when we do have new electric arc furnaces, we're going to be able to have many more industries. We can have offshore wind, there'll be a whole redevelopment of the site. This is actually a great deal, not just for Port Talbot, but for the UK. And what I would say to people who are concerned about job losses is that we do understand, and we have a transition plan in place that's funded up to about £100 million to make sure that people have skills to retrain.
But the Shadow Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, says the government says this moment should be about creating jobs.
I think only this Conservative government could spend £500 million making thousands of people redundant. I was at Port Talbot yesterday. I was talking to the workforce. Of course they support green steel. Of course they want to see this transition take place, but they They were promised they'd be a part of it. They were promised they'd be consulted on the plans for the future. And fundamentally, this should be a story about more jobs. There are huge opportunities for green steel in the UK, and the way that this has been presented to them obviously has them worried.
Now, a French couple has been jailed for almost 10 years after trying to smuggle Vietnamese migrants into the UK hidden inside furniture. Junior Toussaint and Adrienne Paul were sentenced to 9 years and 11 months in prison after pleading guilty to assisting unlawful migration into the UK. The pair squeezed Vietnamese migrants, including children, inside specially adapted sofas and chests of drawers in an effort to smuggle them through border control checks at the port of Newhaven. Now, train drivers will strike at the end of this month in their long-running dispute over pay. The ASLEF union saying its members at 16 train operators will walk out on the 30th of September and the 4th of October. And the action will coincide with the Conservative Party's annual conference. The union said the strikes will force train operators to cancel all services, causing travel disruption for passengers. And 80 prison officers at HMP Wandsworth did not attend their shifts on the day Daniel Khalif escaped from prison. That's according to a government minister. The 21-year-old escaped from Wandsworth prison last week and was later arrested after a 4-day manhunt. Khalif disappeared while awaiting trial after being charged with terror offences in January. An investigation will look at whether the prison followed relevant protocols. You're with GB News across the UK on your TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Thanks for that, Polly. I'm Michelle Dewberry till 7 o'clock tonight. Dawn Neeson alongside me, the former editor of the Daily Star. I need to go home to bed. I think. You can tell it's Friday. And I'm very, I'm actually high-fiving myself internally that I didn't call you Prawn Neeson, because any time I see you, anyone that's not a regular to this show will have no idea what I am talking about. But that has stuck with me now.
I'm identifying as Prawn just for you, Michelle.
Just for this afternoon.
Just for you.
Just for the rest of the evening. And Paul Embry as well, my
Hello.
Friday regular. We always like Paul, don't we? You all know who Paul is by now, don't you? A firefighter and trade unionist. We normally have a massive debate about your facial hair, but you know what?
You do.
Tonight, I'll
here
leave
to
you
stay.
alone.
It's here to stay.
Is it?
Well, the viewers and listeners spoke, didn't they? And the
Yes.
overwhelming consensus when I shaved it off was bring it back.
So
Now,
did you bring it back because of the viewers?
yeah, much to
Wow.
the chagrin of my wife, I have to say, who was appalled that I brought it back. But there you go. The viewers and listeners always come first.
That
at
is
this
the
channel, we
kind
know
of
that.
commitment to GB News that
Exactly.
I like. He's taken his guidance about his appearance from you guys at home and not his own missus. I like that. You can come again.
Divorce proceedings start next week. by
Oh,
the way.
that's all right. I'm sure there's a delightful bunch of people out there that are single. I'll hook you up with them. Kevin says, well, lots of you getting in touch already with me, actually. You're quick off the mark tonight on this Friday. Who's this? Kevin says, Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at the start of this programme you said that the age of criminality in England and Wales is 12. Ken says, I thought it was 10. You can tell me off if I got it wrong. No, Ken, it was me that got it wrong. I was just checking that you lot are wide awake, and you are. You've passed the Friday awake test. I like it. You're absolutely right. The criminality age in this country, in England and Wales, is indeed, as I was just saying, 12. 10. It's 10 in this country and 12 in Scotland. And the reason this is very important is this is the crux of the main debate I want to have with you tonight to kick this programme off. So I want all your thoughts. You can correct me all you like. gbviews@gbnews.com is my email address, and you can tweet me as well at gbnews, because any of you guys that are on social media, you will have seen a video, and it really, really is pretty disturbing, right? And it stopped me in my tracks. I want to issue a warning to you, because I am about to play this video, but I have obviously blurred out the faces of the people involved. Let me just play it for you and then we'll discuss. This video, right, it is, take my word for it, it's pretty horrific. It took place near Manchester, and it's gone viral, and it sparked, obviously, a huge outrage. Now, the police then took to Twitter off the back of this outrage and confirmed that they have arrested a 12-year-old girl, obviously for assault and the rest of it. Now, I'm not going to discuss the specifics of this girl because it's an ongoing case, but a conversation's been sparked, Paul, about whether or not in this country the age of criminality is at the right level or not, whether or not children, for doing acts that obviously are criminal, should be tried in that way as criminals as opposed to damaged individuals, whether or not they should have criminal records and all the rest of it. Where do you stand on it?
Well, look, I'm no bleeding heart liberal, but I think, I have to say, I think the age of 10 is probably too low.
So 10 is England and Wales.
10 is England and Wales, 12 is Scotland.
Scotland.
I think arguably 12 is too low as well, actually. I think if you look at many countries in Europe, they have an age higher than that, 13, 14, sometimes even higher than that. And I just think it is difficult to be sure that kids, certainly kids at 10, know the difference or have been taught the difference between right from wrong in any serious, meaningful way.
Really?
Well, I think particularly if you think of kids from disadvantaged backgrounds where there may have been a complete absence of love, of care, and they may not have been imbued with that moral compass that many other people are imbued with. So, as I say, I'm not a pleading heart liberal on this because I think certainly the parents need to be held accountable. I think if your kid is going out and committing acts like the horrendous one that we've just seen, I certainly don't believe that the parents should escape some degree of responsibility for that. I'm all in favour of throwing the book at the parents because I think the parents can have a big impact in a young person's life in teaching them right from wrong. But the kid themselves, I would have real problems with saying they must be held criminally accountable at that age.
What age then would you be happy with?
I mean, I would need to look at the evidence. I would need to listen to the arguments for particular ages. So, I'm not going to pluck one out of the air.
But without seeing all that stuff now, you've concluded that the age of 10 is too young.
No, I'm talking from my experience. I think that the age of 10 is too young, and I'm open-minded about what the age should be.
But whilst we're all talking,
but it should be higher.
Whilst we're all talking about 10-year-old criminals, let me just take a nanosecond to remind you of this pair of disgusting, despicable 10-year-old individuals as they were, and I'm sure that some of you will know who I am talking about. And yeah, of course, little James Bulger there alongside one of the people that went on to kill him. And I mean, when I think about, you know, Paul's saying about 10-year-olds and all the rest of it, those boys will never leave my brain. Look at them. And some people go, oh, Michelle, you know, pack it in, they're children. No, they're not. They're absolute... Well, anyway,
the thing is, I mean, that is horrific, Michelle, and no one can ever forget that. And I'm sort of like, you know, I've spoken to our Denise Bulger, Jamie's mum, on several occasions, and this lives with her on a daily basis. It was horrific what Robert Thompson and John Venables did. And John Venables is still serving time because he keeps repeat offending sexual offences. So there is criminality from the age of 10 within that person. So I do disagree with Paul. I think the age of 10 is right. There are many countries in Europe that have the age of 10. Scandinavia is a different one where they have the criminal age of 15, but then they will try and sort of like take the decriminalising thing out of a criminal of 15 and give them social care instead. But there are many countries around the world where the criminal age of consent is 7. Now, I disagree with it being that low. And there is one country where the criminal age of consent is actually 0, and that is Mauritius.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. The burden of proof, though, is you have to prove that that child, no matter how old that child is, knew what they were doing, and that is the problem. But they don't actually have a legal age of criminal consent. It can be from birth. Obviously, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, toddler's not, yeah.
But I mean, it does vary around the world. I mean, sort of most countries between 7 and 10 seems to be pretty much agreed. And Scotland was only put up to 12 a couple of years ago, by the way, so...
See, I think 12's too old. I think Scotland should be brought into line with those guys. For example, in England, it should be 10. We should be united.
OK, so let me ask you this. Do you believe in the proposal for votes at 16?
Oh, here we go.
No, it's a legitimate question, because I don't. I've made this argument frequently, that I think that you cannot say that children of that age, some of whom will still be at school, have got the wherewithal to be able to go into a ballot box and choose the government of the day. I've made that argument consistently.
So I would say, no, I don't agree with votes for 16-year-olds because Lots of them, I think, age of 18, you've got a stake in society, you've hopefully been paying tax for a little bit, you've probably been working and all the rest of it, so then I would bring you in then.
But
to me, that's quite different.
Would you say that 16-year-olds, and some people have called for votes for 14-year-olds as well, would you say that 16-year-olds are, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but not mature enough to be able to exercise a decision of that weight in terms of choosing a government or a local council or something?
No, I don't think it's about maturity. I think it's about having a stake in society. Most 16-year-olds won't be working. When you want to raise the age...
Many will.
When you look at those two kids that I've just demonstrated to you on that screen, I mean, I can't even begin... I mean, I just feel ill even thinking about what those two monsters did to James Bulger. Are you telling me that you think that they shouldn't have been criminally prosecuted at the age of 10?
Look, it was an absolutely horrendous crime, and those of us who are parents will recognise that, and you're right to feel the way that you do. But I do think we need to draw a distinction between horrific crimes that are committed by very, very young children who, in some cases, as I think in at least one of these cases that we're referring to with Jamie Bulger, had the most awful background and the most disadvantaged
Oh, do you know, that is such an insult to people that have had a bad background and are actually decent people.
It's not. It's a question of whether or not kids at that age, at that young age, have had it instilled in them.
So what would you have done with those two kids?
What's the difference between right and wrong?
What would you have done with those two kids?
Well, I certainly children who commit those sorts of acts need to be incarcerated because other children and wider society need to be protected from those people. I'm not disputing that for a second. But at such a young age, 10, 11, 12, if there is the chance of rehabilitation, then I think that's something that we need to try to offer them. And I want to stress again that when it comes to adults committing those sorts of crimes, I would have no problem whatsoever if capital punishment was brought back.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about adults, I'm talking about kids.
I'm trying to, in terms of context, I'm trying to explain that this is not me coming from the point of view of a bleeding heart liberal. But I do think we need to draw a distinction between 10-year-olds committing awful crimes and who have had particular disadvantaged backgrounds and adults doing it gratuitously when they're 20, 30, 40.
You know what? I watched that video of those little girls in Manchester, and I thought the way she was on the floor, she was kicking her in the head. And you watch that and you think, where are the parents? What sort of parenting is going on in those homes? And it's so that, to a certain extent, I'm agreeing with you, Paul. And there are questions to be asked about what sort of homes children are growing up in. But I mean, surely the parents have to be taken to task. I mean, what are they teaching these kids that behaviour is acceptable?
Well, I'm quite harsh, I do confess, because not only would I have arrested the 12-year-old, and I need to be careful because it's an ongoing case.
Yes,
so let's just imagine this fictitious situation. So I would have arrested the perpetrator, but I would have also looked to arrest the people around that were goading, encouraging and filming that behaviour. Because, when there's a murder and stuff, there's the whole concept of about joint enterprise where people are collective, they're in a collective, and you have collective responsibility to a degree. Social media, what social media has done to children of today's society, you can be bullied 24/7. Before, you used to be bullied at school, maybe on the way home and all the rest of it, and then you kind of had a little bit of respite when you went to bed. These days, it is relentless.
It is, and I think children are certainly desensitised as well because of what they see on social media and some of the computer games they play as well. But the problem with what you've suggested, Michelle, I think there might have been people there, kids there as well, in this mythical case we're talking about, who also felt scared for their own safety. So maybe they, what it's like in a gang mentality. I just think prosecuting people for being in the background, I think is a bit of a slippery slope.
No, they stood in the background, cheering, jeering, filming, uploading it. They're not stood there, oh, I'm so frightened, don't hit me. They're part of it.
It's the nature of our age. But I think Dawn has got an important point about, the parents having to take responsibility. And I don't think we're very good at that. If you're an employer and one of your employees bullies someone in the workplace, you're responsible as an employer. I think the same principle
should apply. Well, there you go, prosecute the parents as well, then.
Exactly,
parents of bullies. There you go, we end on a note of agreement. What do you make to it all in terms of the age of criminality? Is it about right? Does it need to change? Does Scotland need to be brought into line with England? You get in touch and you let me know. gbviews@gbnews.com. Coming up after the break, it's not great news, I can tell you now. If you are in Port Talbot, 3,000 jobs potentially at risk. What's going on and what on earth will become of these people? I talk about Port Talbot, the steel company. Get in touch, let me know your thoughts on that.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7. Dawn Nice and Paul Embry alongside me. We're just having a conversation within the break there about that bullying conversation. And Dawn was asking me the question, if you saw that unfolding on the platform in front of you, there's kids beating another kid up, would you intervene? And we were just talking, you know, some of these kids these days, they have knives and...
Yeah. You've got to be so careful. And the thing is, yeah, all of us would. I think you would, because it's human nature as an adult to protect a child. But, as you say, you don't know these days whether the kids have got knives, and they can turn around and then accuse you of touching them in the wrong way, especially if you're a man, Paul. It's like, what are you doing? I'm going to, you know...
I mean, I don't think a lot of people would intervene these days, actually. And I think when you see incidents like this, there's this new phenomenon, which I think is appalling, where lots of people just stand and actually film it. You know, you'll see, for example, you'll see the police trying to arrest someone and that they might be struggling, and you'll see a crowd of 6, 8, 10 people standing around just filming it. What sort of society does that?
People actually film people standing on the edge of buildings committing suicide. I mean, what is...
Yeah, no, guys, I mean...
What have we become?
If you see a child being bullied, you've got to help them, right? If it was your kid, if it was your grandkid, would you want someone to help them? I mean, I certainly would. Me and Liam Halligan, we did intervene in a fight outside the door. I speak from experience. It's the right thing to do, isn't it? You tell me.
Well, you are from Hull, Michelle, so you're pretty used
I was a little bit behind Liam. Liam went first.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Anyway, John says, my brother did wicked things when he was 11, and he did get sent to prison. He says it did him the world of good. Skylar says, I was bullied for over a year at secondary school, and the school basically allowed it by making excuses because she was from a broken home. Keep your thoughts coming in on that one. But look, do you know what? Sad news, I have to say. It all stems around the steel industry because today the UK government has agreed a £500 million support package for Tata Steel. And it's all about trying to secure these jobs, the future of the workers at Port Talbot. Now, the unions are saying that this is all going to have a devastating effect. It's about trying to move towards things like net zero. 3,000 people up to potentially may lose their jobs. I find this devastating for so many reasons. The obvious, no one wants anyone to lose their job. But these kind of steel plants and stuff, they are often the heart of the industry and the communities. Lots of these guys, I'm going to be honest, it's mainly men sometimes, the men have worked there from school, their dads worked there, whatever. They've never done anything else before often. You're going to strip this industry away from them, and then what?
It's devastating, as you say. 3,000 jobs out the window in that community, the impact that will have economically and socially, the knock-on impact in terms of suppliers who are likely to be affected by it as well. But unfortunately, the truth is it's the sign of our decline as a nation in terms of our industrial base, in terms of our manufacturing sector. This isn't anything new, Michelle. This has been going on for at least 40 years. And you know, the reality is that we are a country now that wrongly, in my view, puts all of its faith in financial services and thinks that that's going to bring us prosperity and has completely neglected our manufacturing base and our industrial base. And actually, when you look at the pandemic, we saw the price that we paid in terms of not having an industrial base, in terms of supply chains and the lack of PPE and stuff. That was as clear-cut an example of why I think it's important for any advanced country to have an industrial base, but we just don't have one. I think the other point is that this is all about net zero. It's about achieving net zero, and it's about decarbonising that plant. And in the rush to net zero, it seems to me, and the GMB union is right to say it, these 3,000 people are losing their jobs. So when we talk about a just transition, it's certainly not a just transition for these people.
Well, this is the problem. I mean, there are 8,000 people employed there. 3,000 of those are expected to lose their jobs, which is, as you say, Michelle, absolutely horrific, the area. But this is this relentless and often unrealistic drive to net zero. These people would be losing their jobs whether this industry was nationalised or whoever was running, or whether it got, another bailout, because this is because of net zero. There will be less jobs available for people there, no matter who was running this particular steelwork. So we have to weigh up now with pretty much everything we do in life. How important is net zero to us
right, but then
in the short space of time?
Someone would push back, for example, so someone that supports all this stuff would push back to you and say, you know what, on the one hand, so you might lose some jobs, I don't know, in this industry, whatever, but then you're going to generate new jobs in, I don't know, solar power stuff or wind power stuff or whatever.
Yeah, but that's not helping these 3,000 people who potentially lose their jobs straight away,
and it's not happening. And this is the key point. And I can say, as someone at the heart of the trade union movement, this debate has been raging in the trade union movement for several years now, whereas a lot of unions completely behind the net zero calls are saying, yes, there must be a just transition, exactly what you said, Michelle, go into new renewable industries and so on. And the unions that represent workers in current, if you like, fossil fuel industries like the GMB and like Unite are saying, whoa, hold on a second here. There is no evidence that those industries yet exist to any degree where they can take on thousands of workers who may be bombed out of the fossil fuel industry. This is a clear example of it. These 3,000 people have been let down by the trade union movement more widely, and that really upsets me.
The governments, Paul, and the governments, because, all these grand gestures, all these grand statements, we're going to do it by 2030, by 2050. The people on the ground that are suffering.
Yeah, see, I don't think people have thought through. It all sounds good, doesn't it? We'll do this by 2030, we'll do that by 2050. Yeah, brilliant, sounds great on a piece of paper. But actually, when you look at how you're going to actually achieve that, are we ready to do that? Are the things that you need to be there where they need to be? I would argue probably not. Are the people, the skills, whatever it is there, I just worry that they've not thought it through.
Well, they haven't. They haven't put a safety net in place for these people.
Are you in Port Talbot? Do you work at Tata Steel? I wonder if there's anyone out there watching that's going to be directly impacted by this. It's not just the steel plant as well. You've got all of the cafes, the infrastructure that relies on that workforce.
I mean, if you look at the 1980s, people will have all different views on the great miners' strike in the 1980s, but I think even people who cheered Thatcher on at the time now recognise the legacy that caused in terms of smashing an entire industry, 250,000 men employed in the mine-working industry in the 1980s. And for economic reasons, she wanted to run down the industry, turf them all out of work. Now, whether you agreed with that or not at the time, time, the truth is the legacy that left in terms of, you know, family breakdowns and people being unemployed and not being able to find new jobs, people turning to drink and to drugs and so on. And the kind of deprivation that set in to those communities. Some of these pit villages and towns, exactly what you said about Port Talbot, Michelle, relied on that pit as their main source of employment and their main source of income. And when that went, then we saw the effects of it in terms of the social decay that followed. And we need to remember, even though we think, oh, there's an economic case for getting rid of these 3,000, which I don't think there is at all, by the way, we need to remember what the knock-on effect of that is for the community. It lasts for years, as we saw from the miners.
And this is one of the hearts of the whole levelling up thing, because you've taken a lot of these industries out of the north without actually engaging brain cells as to what it is that you're going to replace them with. So now you've got all of these deprived areas that lack industry. Get in touch, GBViews at gbnews.com. Tell me what you make to it all. Let's, though, first have a look at the weather.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. It's going to stay warm in the south over the next 24 hours. It's going to stay cool in the north. But through the weekend, there's an increased chance of thundery showers in places as the humidity rises. For the time being, a weather front is stuck across the central swathe of the UK. That's been bringing wet weather all day, really, across central and southern Scotland, northern England, Northern Ireland. That continues into the night time. To the far north, we keep clear spells and a few showers. Temperatures dipping in northern Scotland to 3 to 6 Celsius in places. But it's a warm night across much of England and Wales, mid-teens in places. And as the night goes on, an increased chance of some of these thundery showers turning up across parts of Wales and the southwest. These will tend to fade away during the morning once again, and then a fine day for much of the southern half of the UK. An outside chance here and there of the odd thundery shower popping up, but otherwise a lot of fine weather, sunny spells and temperatures reaching 26 or 27 Celsius towards the southeast. It's going to dry up as well across these central parts with the rain easing away. A clear start then on Sunday for Scotland, but a chilly start with the frost in places here. Warmer elsewhere, and through the day on Sunday we're going to see humid air drift north across the UK, and with lowering pressure that will lead to the risk of thundery rain pushing north as well. Monday, further heavy downpours and thunderstorms, and then it turns cooler in the south.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Kevin says, Michelle, Tata Steel is a very important company, but he does ponder, why is it the UK government that's helping give money? £500 million was the amount. He says India is an incredibly rich country, so why isn't it their government that's helping bail this company out? Well, of course, the flip side to that argument, though, is if the government doesn't help step in with a contribution, there's more jobs would be lost, more people then essentially in that dole queue, so we'd be paying that money out a different way.
And couldn't have made that investment inside the EU, by the way, where state aid is outlawed, and in fact the Belgian governments and the Italian governments were fined some years ago for giving state aid to their steel industries. One benefit of Brexit is that they can invest in the steel industry.
Oh, I love the positivity. I love it. Right, coming up, after all this talk, we've been debating it for a few days now, haven't we? The American XL Bully Dog, apparently that breed will be banned by the end of the year. What do you make to that? And if there is a dog attack, by the way, how on earth do you get these dogs off you? I'll be speaking to an expert about all of that.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The
the Dewbs & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political budgets.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Dawn Neeson, the former editor of the Daily Star and a GB News contributor alongside me, as is Paul Embry, a firefighter and a trade unionist. At the top of the show, we were talking about the age of criminality in this country. Michael, you're a harsh man, if you don't mind me saying, because you've got in touch with me on Twitter saying you would lower the age of criminal responsibility to the start point of primary school. So we're talking 5 years old. I don't know. You're also saying as well that you would go on and prosecute those kids 5 years old. I don't know. Yes, you know right from wrong, but do you understand the criminality boundaries? I don't know. I'm going to leave it with you guys to have the final thoughts on that one. I'm going to move on though and talk to you about dogs. Got to be honest, I swore I'd never do that again after the last few days we've had this week. But, you know, the news agenda does move on. So today, you might have noticed the news. The American XL bully dog apparently going to be banned by the end of the year. This, of course, we know what's been going on. There's been a whole spate of attacks, and Rishi Sunak has now decided enough is enough. Let's get straight into this then, shall we, with a man that knows a thing or two about dogs. I'm joined by Robert Allain, who's a founder of the Canine Instructor Academy. Good evening. Thank you for joining me. First things first, about this ban, do you agree with it?
No, I didn't agree with it in 1991 with the American Pit Bull Terrier, and I still don't agree with it today. We've seen how effective it was in 1991. We still see pit bulls. There are estimated to be thousands of them still in the UK. Just a couple of days ago, I had somebody ring up where their pit bull terrier is growling at their toddler. 23 years after this law was put in place, we've still got pit bull terriers. But what it did do was, by criminalising it, it encouraged the people who breed those sort of dogs to look for something else. And then what we got was the XL bully, which was like a pit bull, but much more dangerous. And my concern is if we ban the XL bully, we'll just see history repeat itself. They'll just come up with something else that's outside of the law.
Yeah, and that is a concern that I've heard from quite a few people, I must say. I want to ask you a second question as well, because something caught my eye today. It stopped me again in my tracks. It is horrific, and I think as well you've seen the video. I'm going to play it for my viewers. I warn you, it is quite distressing. So, you know, if you are, you know, easily upset or anything, just look away now. This is a little boy, right, and he's playing. I'll describe it for anyone that's watching and on the radio listening. There's a little boy, and he's playing outside his house. He's playing football, and this dog just basically comes at him out of absolutely nowhere, launches at him, jumps on him, takes him down, and this video is horrific. And this goes on, this dog locks on. You can see, I'm going to keep this video playing so you can see the duration of this attack. Adults come out in a second to try and help him. Robert, the adults are hitting and hitting and hitting this dog, as we're about to see, over and over again. And that dog will not let go. So I'm really fascinated, and I'm sure many of my viewers are too. If you or a loved one find yourself, unfortunately, the victim of one of these dog attacks, what do you do?
Well, of course, we see time and time again, the problem isn't the dog, it's the person who owns the dog, who hasn't brought the dog up properly, who doesn't have enough control of it. Here we see a dog, where is the owner? The owner's not present. And if we just punish this dog, they just go out to...
I know, but you're missing my point. My point respectfully is, if you've got a dog locked onto you, what do you... I mean, they're hitting it, it won't let go. What do you do?
I get that. So it's very difficult because it depends on the dog. Now, when we look at a dog like this one, who clearly means harm, this is not that kind of handbag stuff you see with two dogs making a lot of noise. When you get a situation like this where the dog clearly means somebody serious harm, there are a few things you should do and a few things you never. The most important thing that you see this boy doesn't do is you must stand up. If humanly possible, get up. When you're standing, it's very difficult for the dog to get to the upper part of your body, which is where all the vulnerable stuff is. If the dog gets hold of your arm, you're probably not going to die from that. But if you're on the floor, you expose your whole body to the dog. And there are some really important bits that you can't afford to let the dog get hold of. So first thing, whenever possible, stand up. This next bit is going to sound really strange, but hear me out. If the dog gets hold of a part of you that you think you can afford to lose, like an arm or a leg, leave it there until you can do something effective. Again, what I've seen time and time again in videos, and we see it here, they get the dog off the boy's arm and it immediately goes for his legs and his torso, which are much more vulnerable. Now, in a situation, and what will happen when you're panicked is all of what I'm about to say will go out the window. But in an ideal world, if, for example, there was a house or a door or even a car nearby, you would leave it on your arm, take yourself to that car, open the door, get yourself in the car, and then actually shut the door on the dog's head, repeat, and it will probably let go. We all know when you play tug with a dog, once a dog gets hold of something, the more you tug it, the less likely the dog is to let go. It tightens its grip. So when you see here, they're pulling the little boy, what the dog will do is tighten its grip on his arm. So try and keep the boy still. Some dogs, when you're not moving, their prey drive will reduce and they may voluntarily let go, especially if you're also hitting it. But the risk with hitting it is the dog pairs the pain with the stimulus. So when you're whacking the dog who's attacking the child, in the dog's mind, the pain is coming from the child. So it often causes them to tighten their grip. So try and get the child to stay still. We see in this video, the dog is wearing a collar. What some of those people might have been much better doing is grabbing hold of the collar and tightening or twisting even the collar. So you cut off the dog's airway and that will probably cause the dog to let go.
Right.
Something else you can do, if you've got something very strong and long and flat, think of the wedge you use to hold your door open, that wedge of wood. Something long and flat that's very strong. What you can actually do is push it through the dog's teeth. When the dog's biting on something, there'll be a gap on either side. Slide it through, and then somebody's holding the dog's collar, and then the other hand, you prise the dog's mouth open, so at least for a second it lets go. You've already got hold of the collar that you then pull the dog off.
Right.
Usually the dog will be so focused on the child that you would be able to get hold of it and probably pull the dog away without yourself being attacked.
Goodness me. One of my viewers, Robert, one of my viewers has said she thinks that you get the back legs of the dog and you lift it up.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't lift the dog's back legs up. Don't stick your finger in its bum. All those things will just make the dog turn around at you and you're now at head height with the dog. Don't do any of that. That's terrible
Cool.
ideas. I've heard all
Blimey.
sorts of crazy things. Don't do those.
Right,
Yeah?
fascinating
If you lift
stuff.
up the back leg, front legs will come around and you're then in a lot of trouble. Don't do that.
Whew, goodness me. All right, Robert, that's Robert Lane. Thank you very much for your time. He's the founder of the K9 Instructor Academy. Course scared the life out of me, quite frankly. Patrick Christie's, he told me to put the finger in the bum as well. I thought he was joking. Wow, why would you do that? Anyway, whatever. So what do you make to all of that, the banning of the breeds and the like?
Well, I thought that advice was really interesting, actually. I thought Robert was an impressive guest, and I wouldn't have known any of that information, frankly. I've got a dog. I would not have known any of that information, so it's useful to have that information. I think they are a danger, and they probably should be banned from future breeding. I don't want to see the current ones destroyed. They should be kept under strict conditions, but I think a ban on future breeding is probably justified.
Don?
Well, I mean, the problem you've got with this particular dog, it's not actually a breed, it's a type of dog, and there are no genetic markers that will identify it as an XL bully. This is the problem with banning it, and I completely agree with Robert and the RSPCA that the Dangerous Dog Act is not fit for purpose. It's seen an increase in dog attacks, an increase in the banned dogs, and banning them now is too little, too late.
Too little, too late. Do you agree with that? And would you be there with your wedge, your door wedge, and there's... Oh, really? I'd be absolutely terrified, quite frankly. Anyway, you give me your thoughts on all of that. GB Views at gbnews.com. I'll see you in 2.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. Dewberry Tavern is open, which means that we will imminently be heading to something positive, so cheers to each of you.
Cheers.
Lots of you getting in touch. about the dog attack. We were just sitting and reflecting, saying, actually, it made a lot of sense what that guy was saying, but a few of you are not having any of it. Richard says, what a thing to say. Think about what limb you could do without. Well, actually, when you think about it, like Richard's saying, it sounds quite idiotic, but actually, when you think about that, it's probably, that dog expert, he's probably got quite a good point there. Claire says, so let me get this straight, a small kid is expected to stand up with the weight of that dog. How absolutely ridiculous. And I think that is a good point, actually, because some of these XL bullies weigh more than me.
Yeah.
So how do you even stand up?
To be fair to Robert, I think he did say, look, if you can possibly stand up, then you should try to.
Roman says your contribute was absolutely right. You twist the collar and throttled the dog. Right. And then he's saying some other bits and pieces that you've done. He's telling me he's separated fighting dogs and the twist-pull mechanism on the collar works. Do you know what? I hope and pray that none of us, quite frankly, ever need to put into practice any of the advice that we've just heard. That would be the ideal scenario, wouldn't it, for us all? Keep your thoughts there coming in. But today, did you know, today is the Battle of Britain anniversary. Did you know that? It's the anniversary today?
It's Battle of Britain Day, isn't it? It was the turning point in the conflict.
Good. Well done. Someone knows the history. Do you know that?
Only when the producers told me before we came on set.
Well, the reason I thought it was quite nice, it got me thinking about veterans and what we do and all the rest of it. And I saw something lovely. It warmed my cockles, so it did. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to share it with the viewers to put a smile on your face to send you into the weekend. Look at this. This is a war hero. Ron Tomlin, he's called. He's reached his 100th birthday. What an achievement. And look how it was celebrated. He is a veteran and he got a special RAF flyover this week to celebrate his special birthday. Can you see it coming? This is what we want. This is the way we should treat our veterans, isn't it? Don't you think?
And you know, the truth is there are not that many of them around now.
No, true.
I mean, if you were somebody who was 18 and you joined up at the beginning of the Second World War in 1939, you're in your hundreds now. And there's not many of those people left. And if you only caught the tail end of the war, if you fought towards the end of the war when you turned 18, you're going to be sort of in your late 90s. And we often think that those people are going to be around forever, but they're dwindling in number.
The average age of the lads, and they were mostly boys, in the Battle of Britain was just 20 years old.
Gosh.
It's scary.
And then, do you know, I don't mean to be rude or anything, when you think about 20-year-olds of today, and I mean, I've got one in my mind, I won't name because I'll deeply offend him, but I think they're absolutely blooming gormless. And then but lots of, I'm sure there's some decent ones, I'll caveat that. And then I imagine putting that 20-year-old and many of his generation out there in the front line. I mean, can you imagine?
Well, they get upset if the Wi-Fi goes down, Michelle, don't they? Let's be honest.
But this is what I mean, and they don't make them like those kind of veterans anymore. It was a completely different generation. And I don't know whether or not we do enough to show respect to a lot of our veterans, not just the elder ones from whenever before, but the more recent conflicts as well. I just don't feel like we respect them enough.
No, I don't. And I actually think we have a thing in this country where we actually demonise the elderly. I think we, you know, we either say, or, you know, the pensions, we can't afford the pensions, or we ignore them.
And you know, key point, these people fought real fascism. When we talk about fascism, and that is a word that is so inflated now, and is, you know, Brexit is fascist and the Tory government is fascist and all of this sort of nonsense. Everything that might be mildly on the right gets called fascist. Well, fascism was people in jackboots and Nazis and the Holocaust and people being wiped out because they, you know, were trade unionists or because they were disabled. Let's remember fascism for what it was and what these guys
You're
fought,
so right,
and let's not demean and debase and devalue the word in the way that we do.
We use the phrases like Nazi and Holocaust just too glibly to describe things that are nowhere near the horrors that went on.
But why do you think that is? Because it happens a lot.
It does happen a lot, and I think everything has got more divisive and more angry since Brexit. I hate to say it. Since we had that, we've seemed to have lost the ability to be able to talk sensibly about things, to have a debate without screaming hate and abuse at one another.
And I think there's an air of rigid conformity within our political discourse now, and because so much of it, so many of our public institutions and our media is dominated by the liberal left. And I'm on the left, but I'm not a liberal by any stretch. I think anything that cuts against that, they will instinctively see as being morally inferior, and they will think, you know, you must be some far-right activist, you must be some sort of fascist-adjacent type of person.
But I think people use those slurs in an attempt to humiliate you and silence you, because people think, oh, God, if I call her a racist or a Nazi or whatever, she's going to be like, oh, God, I don't want to be called that, so I better shut up.
I think they genuinely believe that you are a fascist if you voted for... Yeah, I think when, not everybody, but when some people use those words, I think they genuinely believe that you are a fascist. I think
we've lost perspective. We're talking about 20-year-old lads who 83 years ago went and fought for this country.
Well, do we respect the veterans enough in this country? I'll leave you to ponder that. Lots of support for lowering the age of criminal responsibility in this country. You think that 10 perhaps is too young? Sorry, it's not young enough, is what you're saying. You're a harsh bunch. 5, I told you, was suggested as well. Goodness me. Other people saying, actually, rather than the £500 million going to Tata Steel, you would like that money to actually go into Port Talbot and support the local economy there directly. Is that an idea? What would you do, though, with all those people that would potentially lose their jobs? But that is all for tonight. Paul, thank you very much. And Dawn, thank you to you too. I was just about to say, more importantly, thank you to you at home, but you're all important. We're all important together. Anyway, listen, you have a fantastic weekend. Do not go anywhere. Lee Anderson is up next, and I will see you on Monday. Night-night.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. It's going to stay warm in the south over the next 24 hours. It's going to stay cool in the north. But through the weekend, there's an increased chance of thundery showers in places as the humidity rises. For the time being, a weather front is stuck across the central swathe of the UK. That's been bringing wet weather all day, really, across central and southern Scotland, northern England, Northern Ireland. That continues into the night time. To the far north, we keep clear spells and a few showers. Temperatures dipping in northern Scotland to 3 to 6 Celsius in places. But it's a warm night across much of England and Wales, mid-teens in places. And as the night goes on, an increased chance of some of these thundery showers turning up across parts of Wales and the southwest. These will tend to fade away during the morning once again, and then a fine day for much of the southern half of the UK. An outside chance here and there of the odd thundery shower popping up, but otherwise a lot of fine weather, sunny spells and temperatures reaching 26 or 27 Celsius towards the southeast. It's going to dry up as well across these central parts with the rain easing away. A clear start then on Sunday for Scotland, but a chilly start with the frost in places here. Warmer elsewhere, and through the day on Sunday we're going to see humid air drift north across the UK, and with lowering pressure that will lead to the risk of thundery rain pushing north as well. Monday, further heavy downpours and thunderstorms, and then it turns cooler in the south.
The temperature's rising.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.